What's something the Smurfs, Garfield, Kermit the Frog, and former President H.W. Bush all have in common? Well, they all want you to stop taking drugs. And they're all willing to traumatize you to do so because they all star in the hit 1990s television film cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue. I think this is the single most ambitious crossover event there has ever been, or will ever be. I'm sure as kids we all dreamed of our favorite cartoon characters banding together and taking on a larger-than-life threat. And what better villain for Winnie the Pooh, Baby Gonzo, and Slimer to take on than the concept of addiction? It was all hands on deck for this production. It was credited to 5 different directors. Roy Disney himself came and executive produced this, and it even features a song from Academy Award-winning composer Alan Menken. You would have definitely heard his work before. He made songs for The Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, even Little Shop of Horrors. This was a huge crossover event of 10 different animated shows. It was financed through McDonald's, through the Ronald McDonald House Charities, and it was simultaneously aired across all major US television stations, completely ad-free. We're talking CBS, ABC, Fox, NBC, Disney, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and more. It was a whole shebang. In that moment of time, you had essentially no choice but to watch this. McDonald's even gave out 250,000 videotapes to video outlets, libraries, schools, all to rent out for free. This wasn't just cartoon characters across several companies united. This was America united under one clear message: drugs are bad. And let me tell you, this film certainly is a trip. Is there anything more American than forcing your entire populace to watch a war on drugs propaganda video starring characters that existed to sell toys, financed by McDonald's, featuring the president? I think not. Not that we didn't get this in Australia, though. We absolutely did. It also simultaneously aired across all of our channels. However, our version, instead of featuring the US president, ours featured Mr. Prime Minister himself, Bob Hawke.
Many of your favourite characters come together in this one cartoon to help you understand that drugs and alcohol can ruin your life.
Now, if you're not from Australia, you might not know why this bit is funny. Bob Hawke was notorious for his ability to down a beer. He also allegedly beat the world record for downing a yard of beer in under 11 seconds. Even in his later life, you would see him sculling beers at the cricket. He was a true man of the people. That's my president right there. And he sounds really keen to be introducing this cartoon.
These are funny characters, but they have a strong and a serious message.
Now, jumping back to the original US airing, this featured George H.W. Bush, First Lady Barbara Bush, and of course, to make them just that touch more relatable, their dog Millie. Nothing relates to the kids like the president. So Bush was pretty huge on the war on drugs. Although it really began with Reagan and Nixon, Bush more than doubled the federal drug control budget during his time in office. He even held up a bag of crack on live TV once, which was procured just across the street from the White House. How they got this is actually an astounding story. They literally set up an undercover buy from an 18-year-old who was then sentenced to 10 years in prison. The whole point of this specific broadcast was to drum up fear that the drug trade could happen anywhere, even across the street from the White House. But they literally used government resources to lure a teenager there to sell it. This wasn't by happen chance. They lured him there to give the president a prop for his speech to drum up fear. During this time in the 80s and early 90s, there was a huge fear regarding drugs, specifically drug use in children. There was this big misconception that, shadowy figures were going to come to the schools and offer your kids drugs, and they wouldn't be able to possibly say no. This fear was capitalized on and maybe even, dare I say, stoked by the governments at the time. They implemented programs like the d.a.r.e. program. This was designed to give kids the tools to be able to resist peer pressure, but also later studies showed that maybe this had the opposite effect on people. At the time, there was also a huge push to make children's content educational. Bush was president when the Children's Television Act came into play in 1990. Having children's content be educational was huge for parents at the time. It made it a very popular political stance to take. There was a lot of controversy regarding that all these characters were essentially advertisements to sell toys. Some shows like He-Man were a little bit ahead of the curve on this. They would end the episodes by having one of the characters explain what the moral of the episode was.
Maybe like Adam's father, your parents find it a little difficult to say, "I love you."
A very long time ago, a wonderful document came into being. It was called the Magna Carta.
Ramming things may look like fun, but it really isn't.
Honestly, some of these are so iconic and hilarious. I think that we should still end television shows like this today. Now, as we all know, the war on drugs was a huge success. You can't find them anywhere anymore and nobody has them. And I think a big reason behind this is due to the television film Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue. So come with me on this journey and let's have a look at how these crazy, kooky cartoon characters saved America. Nay, saved the world. I love 80s and 90s animation, so as soon as I found out this existed, I was stoked, and I hope you are equally as stoked as you strap in for this journey, because it's gonna be a bumpy ride. Now, as we get into this, remember that the film is reportedly targeted towards the ages of 5 to 11, and the writing and animating process allegedly took between 6 and 8 weeks, which is an alarmingly short amount of time for a project so ambitious. I think to really get you in the headspace for this film, maybe think of a couple of the characters as, you know, maybe Bluey or SpongeBob, other modern characters, so it can really hammer home how strange this piece of media is. Now take it away, Mr. President.
Some of your favorite cartoon characters will help you understand how drugs and alcohol can ruin your life.
As we leave the White House, we come to a quaint suburban neighborhood. A little girl named Corey sleeps in her bed as a mysterious hand comes in and steals her piggy bank. Meanwhile, in a comic book, Papa Smurf wakes up and he apparently has the ability to see through dimensions, and he notices that the piggy bank is missing. So he sounds the alarm, and then all the Smurfs head out of the comic book to go wake her up. This is all noticed by Alf. For some reason, Alf lives in a picture frame, which I guess is a perfectly normal thing for a girl of her age to have at the time. While Alf is probably more widely known for his puppet appearance, he did have an animated show as well at the time. He asks Garfield, who is a lamp, to come help him look for the thief, and Garfield refuses, so Alf threatens to eat him. Canonically, that's something that Alf's species likes to eat. They like to eat cats. I love the idea that Garfield has no interest in helping in this film whatsoever. He just doesn't want to die. So Alf and Garfield head off to find the thief, and who catches them leaving? Well, of course, it's the Chipmunks. Theodore and Simon want to help, so they just carry Alvin with them. Meanwhile, the Smurfs stack up to go wake up the girl, which Winnie the Pooh, who's a stuffed toy, sees, and then Winnie the Pooh sets off Baby Kermit, who is an alarm clock. Baby Kermit is, of course, a baby Muppet from the show Muppet Babies, which is a show where all the Muppets are babies. Now, important note, it seems there are Toy Story rules going on here. As the girl wakes up, the Smurfs all hide, and then the other two turn into their inanimate state. This is where Slimer from the animated Ghostbusters show just comes out of the wall. I guess he's just a regular ghost. He proceeds to eat a lamp, and then his mouth kind of acts as a spotlight to identify to the girl that her piggy bank is missing. Why doesn't she notice that 2 of her lamps are missing? The girl's got to be loaded. She's got 2 whole lamps. For some reason, she's more surprised about her missing piggy bank than the literal ghost in her room. I guess she didn't see it. Meanwhile, during their short walk down the hallway, our animated investigators have just grown to their regular sizes. They're no longer toy-sized anymore. Yeah, apparently the Chipmunks were actually this big in their animated show. I had only seen the films, so I assumed they were always meant to be chipmunk-sized, but apparently not. While investigating the brother Michael's room, they hear him coming back and they gotta hide. And it turns out that he was the culprit. Corey comes in and catches him red-handed, but Michael assures her that he was just trying to fix it. Sounds like a lie to me. There's also a suspicious box which he hides under his bed. This box is full of evil paraphernalia, like matches and a ocarina, and the Toons are just astonished. Simon, who is a nerd and a narc, explains what he thinks it might be.
My guess would be marijuana, an unlawful substance used to experience artificial highs.
Yeah, those are words I never thought I would hear a chipmunk say. Michael's also acting super weird, and something's wrong with his eyes. Maybe Simon's onto something here. All the Toons convene, and they decide that they all want to help Michael.
Simon suspects drugs.
Oh, my.
Oh, that's bad news. Let's help him.
Come on.
I have no idea why Slimer, of all characters, cares. I feel like maybe I missed that character arc for him. Also, Garfield is a literal lasagna addict, okay? I think they need to help him first. So they all go off and help him, except for Winnie the Pooh, who just stays at home, because he's lazy. Now we're introduced to Smoke, who is the villain of the piece, as Michael blazes up in the arcade. Throughout the whole film, he's just trying to convince Michael to get high and ignore his family and stuff like that. But do you know what's cooler than Chronic? Crack. All the kids are totally down to do it, but they hear the fuzz and they gotta book it. Michael is cornered. He's even abandoned by Smoke. He's about to become a victim of the war on drugs. And according to the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, the minimum sentence for a first offender of marijuana possession is 2 to 5 years. But thankfully, it's just Bugs Bunny. Wait, hang on. What? Yeah, so Bugs Bunny wasn't with the earlier Toon characters, and he didn't even know that Michael was partaking in the devil's lettuce.
What's this? A joint?
And he's not trying to hide his existence or anything. He's not a toy come to life or something. Literally just wandering around impersonating a cop. Is he meant to be like a hallucination? If I do drugs, can I hang out with Bugs Bunny? Or is he just like a real dude wandering around? I don't know. Anyway, no time to explain. Get in this time machine. Meanwhile, the father notices that some of his beers are missing, but he doesn't really think anything of it. And the mother talks to Corey, asking if anything's wrong, and Corey says that nothing's wrong because she ain't no snitch. This is where Winnie the Pooh reveals his existence to her. He's just revealing that he's a sentient being now. And he does this solely just to question her life choices.
If I tell and he gets in trouble, he'll blame me.
What will happen to him if you don't tell?
Meanwhile, Bugs, Smoke, and Michael travel back 2 years into the past. Interesting fact, this is the first time that Bugs Bunny was voiced by someone other than the original voice actor Mel Blanc. He had recently passed away due to numerous health issues relating to smoking. So there's that. Past version of Michael sees kids blazing up at school and they end up peer pressuring him into trying it. Glad you whipped out the time machine for this astounding revelation, Bugs. But as I said earlier, this was one of the big talking points at the time. It's all about educating kids to resist peer pressure. Bugs just fully lays into him here, like it's a full-on roast fest.
Better a wimp than an all-day sucker. Not very bright. Definitely not one of the world's foremost thinkers.
Honestly, I'm about to side with that evil Smoke dude because this is feeling a little mean-spirited at this point. Anyway, Bugs explodes Smoke in some kind of metaphor, and it cuts to the little girl having a conversation with her father. She starts trying to explain what's going on, and then just kind of gives up halfway through. And then it cuts back to Michael, who is now smoking a pipe in a park. How do we go from Michael being 2 years in the past with Bugs Bunny to him just chilling in a park? It's like they couldn't think of a way to transition this, so they just shoved in a little tiny scene of the girl? I don't know. Anyway, his friend knows where to score crack for only $10. Michael starts walking away, and then they steal his wallet. As Michael gives chase, he is kidnapped by none other than Michelangelo, the Ninja Turtle himself. Real heroic move, man. A guy just got his wallet stolen, and then you kidnap the victim. Love the implication of this, that the cartoon characters just do not care about anyone else. They only care about Michael. This girl just robbed someone to buy crack. Do something about her first, man. You got your priorities twisted here, Michelangelo. Are you meant to be some kind of superhero? What are you doing? Also, for some reason, none of the other Ninja Turtles are in this. It's just Michelangelo. For some reason, they picked the one who has the same name as the main character. Also, out of all the Ninja Turtles, probably the most likely to be a stoner. And also, they didn't put him in any of the promotional materials for this. Smurfette made the poster, and she's not even in the bloody thing. The hell are they doing here? This is easily one of the most popular characters in this thing, and he's a cool guy. More people are gonna listen to him than they are, Simon. Michelangelo has some stern words for him and then flushes him down a sewer. It's honestly so abrasive seeing so many of these iconic characters just be really, really rude. Just be so mean to someone who is clearly struggling with addiction. Now, this is where the film starts going really off the rails, if you can believe it. We were on the rails before this.
You're about to take a trip through the human brain.
Yep. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so Baby Kermit and Baby Miss Piggy are taking Michael on a tour of the brain. Not really a tour though, it's more of just a roller coaster, because for every up, there's an even bigger down. See. At this point, it seems they've just completely thrown away the concept that all these characters were toys. They're all now just whatever the plot needs, or they're like hallucinations or something. I don't bloody know. I don't know what's happening. Baby Gonzo just shows up out of nowhere as all these hellish, nightmarish visuals are being thrown at the screen, and 3 literal babies explain the chemical nature of addiction. And then we get our big reveal. It wasn't just any old brain, it was Michael's brain, and he's having some kind of crazy sunken place experience. You can't tell what's happening at this point. They're essentially doing a very loose adaptation of A Christmas Carol. In the original story, Scrooge, who is a notorious Christmas hater, is visited by 3 ghosts, past, present, and future, and ultimately by the end, they cause him to change his ways. But in this, instead of an old man, it's a young man, and instead of Christmas, it's sobriety, and instead of the ghost of Christmas past, it was Bugs Bunny, and for present, it was the Muppet Babies. At this point, the Muppet Babies are literally choking on secondhand smoke, and as the brain begins to crumble, the babies flee and literally lock Michael inside his own head. He's out of control and he collapses, but he comes to his senses when he is greeted by Huey, Dewey, and Louie from the DuckTales. So maybe he hasn't come to his senses. Maybe he's still high and he's surrounded by 3 literal ducks.
I gotta get off of these drugs.
Drugs!
So he's just telling everyone that he's on drugs at this point. But the ducks tell him that he's just got to say no to substances. And it turns out there's at least a million zillion ways to say no. This is where the song comes in, Wonderful Ways to Say No. It features the DuckTales Ducks, the Muppet Babies, Garfield, Winnie the Pooh, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Alf, Michelangelo, a Smurf, Bugs Bunny, and for some reason Tigger's here now. Unfortunately, on the way over to the park, Papa Smurf died. He didn't make it, sorry folks. Now, because I don't know how much of the song I can actually play, I'm just going to give you some of the examples of different ways to say no from the song. You could say you're late for baseball, you could say your hamster died, you're training for football, that you're allergic, you could say no thanks, you could say that those drugs are boring. If you're in Berlin, you can say 9. Tigger suggests that you could spit in their eye, and ultimately Miss Piggy implies that you should kick the shit out of them. Michael wakes up from this like it was the worst nightmare that he's ever experienced, and I think that's fair enough. Oh wow, thank goodness, this whole thing was a dream. I'm so glad this is over. Time to open the old drug box and oh my god, it's still going. Corey comes in to talk to Michael and he proceeds to aggressively throw her. As he looks at himself and begins to reflect on his decisions, he is greeted by every child's favorite cat eater, Alf, who proceeds to pull him into the mirror dimension. It's here that Alf decides to gaslight Michael in a very confusing scene. He implies that Michael can't see things the way they really are, in quite a literal sense, to the point where Michael can't even tell what he looks like in the mirror. Alf shows him that he really looks like a zombie. I'm watching the film and I can clearly see that Michael doesn't look like that. What are they trying to say here? And to clarify, this is not Alf saying that Michael will look like this, he is saying that Michael currently looks like this. We're not up to the future bit yet, you gotta hold your horses for that. Corey comes back into Michael's room, but he's not there anywhere, because he's in the mirror dimension. She sees the box on the ground, and the evil Smoke tries to convince her to open it. Don't do it, Corey, it's not worth it. Winnie the Pooh doesn't think it's a good idea, so Smoke proceeds to just yeet him across the room. Corey doesn't really give a shit about this because she is too enamored by the drugs. At this point, Michael is just running around some kind of freakish carnival hellscape. There's all these buzzsaws. At one point, he falls into the mouth of a demon. I'm not sure this is meant to represent anything in particular. I think it's just trippy visuals for a scare tactic. The idea behind scare tactics like this is that it's meant to create an association in a child's brain. This was scary and this was about drugs and therefore drugs are scary. But in reality, it's more likely to have an opposite effect. Let's say years after watching this, a young person is at a friend's house and they decide to smoke weed for the first time. They're nervous because drugs are scary. That association is still there. But horror movies are scary and roller coasters are scary and those are fun. And they're in a safe environment and they're not gonna let Simon control what they do with their life. But they try it and then hypothetically everything is really fine and chill and they had a good time. It was not remotely comparable to the hellscape that they depicted in the cartoon. So therefore harder drugs can't be as bad as they say either. But if this was so dramatically overhyped, then harder drugs aren't going to be that much worse. This is why education is always so much more important than scare tactics. You see what I'm saying? Did this make sense? Does this make sense? Anyway, yeah, back to the cartoon. He sees a carnival tent that's advertising fortune telling and he's curious, so he goes in. And who's in there? Well, it's none other than notorious con artist Daffy Duck. Daffy Duck is our ghost of Christmas future. Anyway, Michael sees his future, which is him strung out, looking like a zombie, needle in his arm. It's honestly a pretty traumatizing image for a kid. I don't know why they didn't just stick with the classic, you know, kind of like headstone, just saying that he died from it or something. This feels like maybe too much for a show that also includes Winnie the Pooh. As he has his drugs a bad epiphany, a bunch of the cartoon characters come in and say their piece. It reminds me a lot of that scene in Neon Genesis Evangelion when all the characters come in and congratulate Shinji. He comes out of the closet, he smacks the box out of his sister's hands, and after a talk, he vows to quit drugs forever, and he throws Smoke in the trash, but he knows he'll be back one day. But he also knows that he's got his friends and his family to back him up. Winnie the Pooh then joins all of his friends in a poster. I guess they forgot that he was a stuffed toy. Michael and his sister leave to go tell his parents all about what happened today. This film left me with one main question, and that was, what the hell happened to Slimer? Did the dude finally go to heaven after his one good deed? What happened here? Did they forget about him? Where's my guy? I get that he doesn't have a voice for singing, but I feel like they could have put him in the song. He can lip sync or something. At least one of the Smurfs got to be in it. They were literally doing a Christmas carol. You know, ghosts? Ghost of Christmas future. Slimer is a ghost. Make the connection. While this film had zero lasting cultural impact, I can safely say that it greatly impacted me. I honestly really love this. The visual of baby Kermit abandoning a child in his own overdosing brain is a visual that I will never forget and I will always hold dear. Honestly gonna rewatch this for every year for the rest of my life. Alright, catch you next time, and remember, the moral of this video was to not do drugs.
Drugs don't make your problems go away, they just create more.